What's good, y'all? Anderson Emerald here, and today I just want to quickly give you my thoughts and, my quick overview of some of the highlights and performances from a few athletes that competed over this past weekend. Specifically in the 100-meter dash for the most part, where we had like Trayvon Bromell, Bayanda Walaza, Shericka Jackson, of course, also even Kerley, Letsile Tebogo. Want to talk about all those different athletes. Kishane Thompson also ran, and then also just want to talk about Femke Bol very quickly. So, want to quickly go through first Trayvon Bromell. He was running down at the Pure Athletics meet down in Clearmont, Florida, and he ran a 9.91 second 100-meter dash time to make him number 2 in the world this year. Of course, only behind Akani Simbine, who's run 9.90. But more importantly, this is the fastest time that Trayvon has run since 2022. And that year, he was tearing it up, which eventually led to a bronze medal at the World Championships that year. So this is a big performance for him because, number one, it confirms that he's healthy. We saw him run indoors where he ran a few different races, but he unfortunately pulled out of the USA Indoor Championships due to injury. But he came back outdoors in 2025 running a few 200-meter races with 20.55 and 20.85, again, in the middle of April or so. But now to have him open up his first 100, now not open up his season, but just his first 100 of the year, and to run a 9.91, literally one of his fastest times in his career, and of course his fastest time since 2022, this is a strong indicator that A, he's healthy, and B, he's ready to continuously improve and potentially challenge for a spot on the team to the World Championships this year. Now, let's be clear. This is a very, very tough team to make for the United States. There's so many athletes who are very much in the conversation between a Kenny Bednarek, between a Fred Kerley, even guys like a Courtney Lindsay or a Christian Miller, Christian Coleman, right? Kyrie King. Like, there's a lot of guys, Brandon Hicklin, who are very much, challenging to be able to get onto the team to the World Championships this year. But the good thing that's in Trayvon's favor is that Noah Lyles has the wild card to the World Championships. So it's going to be 4 athletes from the United States that actually go to Tokyo. So that does open the door slightly for Trayvon. And let's be clear, Trayvon Bromell is clearly one of the most talented athletes in the United States over the past, decade at this point. Like, even think about this. Trayvon kind of he is from the Usain Bolt era, right? That second half from 2015 when he first got a medal at the World Championships, getting bronze behind Usain Bolt and Justin Gatlin, tied with Andre DeGrasse. That's the era that he comes from. Andre DeGrasse was at those world champs. You had Akani Simbine, that was his second world championship. So that's where Trayvon Bromell is from. So he's almost like an elder statesman of sorts when talking about the 100. It's just that injuries have unfortunately always gotten the best of him. The last time that we did see him at, competing with some of the top guys was at the 2023 USA Championships, where even there he was injured, but he managed to get 6th place in that 100-meter final. But he, eventually got surgery after that. So I don't know. It's tough to see, where Bromell goes because he's been so injury prone, so up and down. But I am excited to see that he's running this 9.91, showing that he's healthy, showing that he still has that talent. We should never forget about him. And if he's able to make it to USA's 100% healthy, or at least in some good form, I mean, it's going to be hard to pick 3 people to finish ahead of him. Again, the field is very competitive, but Noah Lyles has that wild card to Worlds that opens the door just slightly. So shout out to Trayvon Bromell. Excited to see how the year progresses for him. But let's move over to the Zagreb Continental Tour, where Bayanda Walaza from South Africa ran a 9.94 second personal best to win that race. I'd spoken about, I'd done a preview video, about Walaza the day before, but I'm gonna be honest, this kind of exceeded my expectations. 9.94 seconds into a headwind of 0.3 seconds. This was a great performance. And I think on paper, this is the fastest U20 100-meter time when it's converted for wind and all those conditions, right? You have Letsile Tebogo, he's run 9.91, but that was with a tailwind. You have a couple other guys who have run it with tailwinds. This running into a headwind for Walaza, massive performance. And he's clearly on an upward trajectory when talking about his career right now. Coming off the U20 championships last year, where he won the 100 and won the 200. Now he's just been consistently getting better. Ran sub 10 seconds early this year. Now backing it up with a 9.94 in a, professional race, right? We're not talking about with other U20 athletes, or we're not talking about down in South Africa with, sometimes altitude and all those kind of factors. No, this was a 100% legit race that you can't deny in any capacity. you couldn't have denied him before. But I'm really, really excited for Walaza and what he's potentially going to be able to do as we continue through 2025. The big thing here is that you have Akani Simbine, who's still the leader of course, South African sprinting, but also like the world right now. But I feel like Walaza is kind of the leader of the next generation of South African sprinters, where you have a lot of guys in South Africa, very young guys who are on the rise, who are consistently getting faster and faster, and kind of building this group of like, listen, we're coming to potentially take over, some of those spots in the finals at World Championships, at Olympic Games. Walaza is kind of the leader of that generation. So I'm excited to see, how he does progress. And of course, the conversation is always going to be about his form, right? He's what people have been saying, he's running like a horse or like a camel or something crazy, right? His form is not great. But I think similar to Gout, where people have kind of, discussed or critiqued his form and, how he actually sprints. I think with Walaza, because he's still young, right, we should still allow him to develop and progress, as a young athlete. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? He's going to continue to get better and better as he does get older, but I think it's okay to allow that progression to happen. Shout out to Justin Gatlin. I think a while back he did mention on the, him and Rodney kind of mentioned that Walaza has formed similar to Asafa Powell kind of back in like 2001, 2002, before he really became, the top athlete that we know him as, kind of in like 2004 at the Olympic Games that season. So I think we're going to see some progression from Walaza. And listen, when he starts to get things like really right, when he gets a little bit older, when he's like 20, listen, he's going to be a problem. So shout out to Bayanda Walaza and his 9.94 into a negative 0.3 headwind all the way out in Zagreb. But let's circle over to the Rabat Diamond League, where starting off with Shericka Jackson in the 100. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from Shericka Jackson here. This was her first 100-meter race of the year, but she has been running a bunch of races already. We've seen her run 60 meters early in this year. We've seen her run a 200 at the Diamond League. We've seen her run, at the World Relays on the 4x1s. Like, we've seen her a lot, but this was her first 100. And she's spoken about, check out the preview that I did, she was deciding on if she will focus specifically on the 200 this year at World Champs, or if she's actually going to go through with a 100-200 double. Now, from this performance, this 11.04, despite the win, you can clearly see that she was not fully satisfied. You can see the expression on her face after she crossed the line. Now, what I take away from this is she probably was looking for a little bit more to give her a better indication of like, okay, I'm really going to be ready to make the team in the 100 for Jamaica. Why? The 100-meter dash in Jamaica is very, very challenging right now. And this 11.04 essentially just puts Shericka right in the mix with all the other women, with Tia Clayen, who's run 10.9 already, with, Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, who's run 11.05, but, 10.9 windy, with Tina Clayen, with, all these other women who have been, getting into the conversation right now in 2025 and are very likely going to be challenging for spots at the Jamaican Trials. Remember, Jamaican Trials is just about 1 month away at the end of June. So I do think that she was looking for a little bit better of an indicator in this 100 to see, okay, this means that I'm ready to be able to go and make the team in the 100 and then go to the World Championships and actually double. Between now and Jamaican Trials, she's going to run the 200 at the Racers Grand Prix on June 7th, and then maybe one more race before then, not exactly sure, but then she'll go to the Jamaican Trials. What I think is that because she has the wild card in the 200 to the World Championships, I could imagine her running the 100 at the Jamaican Trials, coming off this 11.04, and then even if she finishes top 3, right, and she actually does make the team to the World Championships in Tokyo in the 100, I think she'll still wait to actually decide if she'll run the double at those World Championships. She'll still kind of leave it open until, a few weeks or months later before she actually determines, all right, I'm ready to go for a 100-200 double like I've done at previous championships, right? Think about it. Her number one goal is to remain healthy and defend her 200-meter world title in Tokyo this year. She's a 2-time world champion from 2022 and 2023 in the 200. Yes, she wants more accolades, but she wants to defend that title, and I think that's priority number one. The 100 would be an additional accolade, right? But I don't think she wants to potentially risk anything if that reduces her chances in the 200. Of course, again, that's like her event. That's what she really wants. Remember, last year, to me, if that told me anything, we really don't know what's going on in the background. Listen, all due respect to Shericka and her team, but like, they were telling us that she was 100% healthy. They were telling us that she was ready to run. And then we get to, the Olympic Games, literally the Olympic Games. And it's like, she pulls out from the 100, then pulls out from the 200. And it was devastating, right? An athlete never wants to go through that. But it just speaks to how it's impossible for us to really know what's going on in the background. So I think for 100% fact, her goal is to remain healthy, defend her title in the 200. Anything else on top of that, potentially a 100-meter, a chance to double in the 100 and the 200, I think that's going to be extra to her ultimate goal here. So that's just my speculation. We'll see how things actually do pan out, but shout out to Shericka Jackson and her performance there. Sticking in Rabat, let's talk about that 100 where we had a couple performances here, but Akani Simbine, 9.95 to get the win in the 100 here over a strong field, showing his consistency across the board, right? From my understanding, he's taking a break from competition for a couple weeks now to, to train and just go back into locking things down. He still has all the way until September. We're talking about, 4 months at this point before the World Champs. He's just going to be locking down, but he's showing he's unstoppable at this moment. Yes, check out the video that I did. I think him and Kenny B are probably the top 2 guys in the 100 right now, but in terms of his competition, he's just unstoppable. I thought this would be a little bit closer. No one's touching Akani. No one is touching right now. No, again, we still got to see how this translates to the World Champs, but I really like Akani Simbine and his chances as we go into Tokyo later on this summer. Now, behind him, we did see Ferdinand Omanyala. He ran 10.05 seconds, so, decently strong performance for Omanyala, but we also did see Fred Kerley, who ran 10.07 seconds, and he was in the midst of a double. He ran 10.07 in the 100, then he doubled back in the 200, running 22.16 behind Courtney Lindsay, and then also Joe Fambale, who went 1-2 in that 200. Now, for me with Fred here is, I think this was a pretty good showing from Fred, right? First race on the Diamond League circuit this year. He didn't go out to China. He was running Grand Slam track, in Kingston. Of course, he was, suspended by Grand Slam track until further notice. So that's still TBD. He won't be in Philly. He wasn't in Miami. I think for the most part, he kind of held things down in both races. It's really hard for me to tell what Fred Kerley's trajectory is for, of course, 2025, but any season, considering last year, he was not having a great season prior to USA's for the most part, but he found a way. He turned it on, qualified for the Olympic team, and got a medal at the Olympic Games. So it's hard for me to really count Fred out in any capacity. He's already run sub 10 this year with his 9.9. So I think that, he is in some good form going into USA's, which is still all the way at the end of July, beginning of August. So we still have time, but I don't know. It's just hard to tell how Fred is in terms of his performances and his trajectory in a season. But I think what I'm looking forward to is I want to see if Fred will actually double at USA's this year. Will he do the 100 and the 200? There's very little risk for him because the 100 is first, which is, of course, his primary event in a sense, what he's been most consistent at, despite being, still very talented at the 200. Or, similar to last year, maybe he only does 100 and skips out on the 2. So I don't know. We'll see. Again, last year, he got a medal at the Olympic Games, getting that bronze at the Olympics, but the field is getting very, very competitive. If you're talking about Trayvon Bromell is coming back, if you're talking about Bayanda Walaza is in the conversation, right? Akani Simbine is looking more and more consistent. Kenny B is looking more so the field is very competitive, but it's very hard to count out Fred Kerley. So we'll see how that does progress through the year. Now, also in the field, both the 100 and the 200 was Letsile Tebogo, but he ran the 100, 10.43 seconds, finished dead last. He kind of just eased up at the very end. And at first it looked like, he was kind of doing the same thing he had been doing at the previous Chinese Diamond Leagues, but he eventually then did pull out of the 200, and later on, he came out with a statement on Instagram saying that he'd been dealing with a reoccurring injury, which again prevented him from completing this double at the Rabat Diamond League. So this was tough to see for someone, of course, who's the Olympic champion from last year, for someone who's, probably one of the top generational talents in the sport for a very long time across the 100, 200, and 400. But I don't necessarily think this explains his earlier performances at the Diamond League, right, in China, both in Xiamen and Shanghai, where he wasn't running as well. And it may likely have been a more recent injury that he picked up. Now, this is pure speculation, right? He didn't give very specific details or anything like that. But I just think of it because he ran a lot of races early in the year with the 400s. Then he went straight to, he went to Botswana, ran the 200, went to China, ran the 100s. And then he came to Doha and actually ran the 200 and beat out Courtney Lindsay, right? So he had and looks good, right? Looking over to the side, he looked pretty good. But he did pull out of World Relays prior to that, right? Just before Doha. So I don't know if that may have been a reason he pulled out of World Relays, right? He started to feel some niggles. I know there was a money conversation that was never 100% confirmed, unless someone could put in the comments it was 100% confirmed, right? Either side, I didn't see any statements saying, yes, it was a money issue, right? Botswana Athletics Association or Letsile Tebogo. Both of them just said personal. But I don't know what this will mean going forward. The big thing though that I take away is that Letsile does not have a trials. He is going to be at the World Championships. He is going to compete in the 100 and the 200, and that's all the way down in September. So he has a significant amount of time to be able to get his body ready, to get healthy, to prepare, to fix things up, and then, you know, compete when we get to Tokyo. By the time we get to like August, right, when the Diamond Leagues are back on, you know, after all the, you know, national championships and things like that, he'll probably be able to get back on the circuit. We're still only in the end of May. So I think for the most part, Letsile has time to be able to get ready. But of course, it's concerning for any athlete to have to pull out of a race, specifically after competing in one race and not doing the other, you know, due to injury. So shout out to Letsile Tebogo, but we'll see how that does go. Now, Kishane Thompson, he actually ran down in Jamaica. This was very low key. Down in Jamaica, in Kingston, he ran 10.04 seconds. It was a windy race though. It was plus 2.4 meters per second, so not legal. I mean, this year he's already run fast, right? He's run 9.99 seconds out at the Shanghai Diamond League, so I'm not too concerned about, you know, this time here, and I actually think this is pretty good. There were heats and finals. He pulled out of the finals, so maybe he just wanted to get this one race in. Remember, he ran at the Shanghai Diamond League early in the year, right at the top of May, but then he didn't get to run at World Relays because Jamaica unfortunately dropped the baton and then, you know, of course, got injured in the final. So all these things happened that didn't give Kishane an opportunity to actually compete. So what I suspect is that he competed here to make up for the loss of racing that he was supposed to do at the World Relays. It is what it is. I'm excited to see how this does progress. Kishane will be running at the Racers Grand Prix on June 7th, so in just about 2 weeks time or so. So we'll see how that actually does go for Kishane. He's supposed to run against Oblique Seville. Oblique Seville pulled out a Grand Slam track, might be injured from the Adidas Atlanta City Games, so we'll see. But Racers Grand Prix on June 7th. He'll go to trials at the end of June. He'll be racing the 100, so we'll see. Kishane, excited to just see his progress. Last thing, Femke Bol finally opened up her 2025 season. This, of course, is in the 400-meter hurdles, not the 100, but she ran 52.46 seconds, which is by far her fastest opener ever in the 400-meter hurdles. Her previous best was 53.07 in 2024. So kind of like a drastic increase, right? We're talking about 0.6 of a second, you know, improvement in terms of her season's opener relative to last year. So I think that it looks like not running indoors actually did pay off. Now, let's be clear. Sydney McLaughlin-Roney does still have the world lead, and I don't think anyone, you know, would actually pick Femke Bol to beat out Sydney, you know, in the 400-meter hurdles at any point. You know, they're just on different levels, just a fact of life. But Femke is in a very, very, very great position to make some drastic improvement on what she did last year. And the thing I'm looking for is, it'll be interesting to see if she's able to go under 51 seconds again this year, specifically at either the World Championships or maybe at a one-off race throughout the season. Last year, she did run 50.95 seconds. That was out at altitude at the Switzerland meet. But her next best is 51.30, which she ran at the London Diamond League last year. So she's clearly capable. And if she's starting off with 52.46, that means she is in some great form. So excited to see how she does progress in 2025. But those were just some of the, you know, highlights that I wanted to take a look at from this past weekend, specifically in the 100, tacking on Femke Bol there. From now, we got Grand Slam track coming up this weekend in Philly. I'm of course going to be putting out my previews, my top 8 previews across the board in all the sprints and the hurdle events. So stay tuned for that, you know, coming up very, very soon. But let me know what was your highlight from this past weekend, you know, across the world in all the different events. And if there was something else that I missed that you really wanted to, you know, thought really did stand out. So let me know what you think. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always do appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.